Welcome to Beyond the Gates 2024. I am Jerry and you're watching Rauta channel. Here we have a special guest in our own apartment, not the typical backstage area that is, and we have a little bit of drinks to keep us not so thirsty. This is Vemod from Norway. Sir, please state your name and status. Why are you here with me?
My name is Jan Even. I am the founder and songwriter and lyricist of Vemod, and we are playing at the Grieghallen tomorrow, Saturday.
All right.
At the gates.
Thank you for coming. Let's have drinks and
Thank you.
get the story going. Now, before, in order to avoid any confusion and all that stuff, according to Metal Archives, there are a couple of Vemod, both from Norway.
Yeah, that's true.
So what's the story with this name similarity or overlapping? What's the story with you guys?
Oh, the story is that I think we came up with the name when just like the year before we recorded our first demo, which would be like 2003 or something, around that time. And back then I was not aware there was another band and called Vemod. It was a short-lived project, I think, and I don't know all the details about that band, but it was also located in Trondheim, I believe, for a time at least, so that's very weird. But we did some research when we found out that there was another band called Vemod, and we were really bummed because we thought it was a great name, and we had sort of started to become really familiar with the idea of calling our band Vemod. So, but we soon figured out that these guys had not been doing anything for some years, and they were not active. And I think also my bandmate sent an email to one of those guys and asked if it was okay that we also call our band Vemod. And I believe he said that was okay because the band was gone and dead. So they released a demo on CDR, I think, in '98 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And now recently it has been reissued and so on. So
things get more confused in that sense.
Yeah, a little bit confusing right now. I think some people believe it's the same band, but I think most people are aware that it's two different styles, obviously, and two different aesthetics and all the rest of it. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that story. I think it's, Yeah,
I noticed that it can be a little bit confusing because if you go for streaming platforms, which obviously don't know the difference.
Right.
So if you go like for Spotify or whatever, type Vemod and then you're like, okay, there's this demo and there's albums, and that's why I wanted to ask about it.
Yeah.
Talking about the name, what is the meaning of Vemod?
Okay, so is a Norwegian word, also the same in Swedish. I think what the direct translation of it also, I think, is stated on Metal Archives, which is something like a pensive melancholy about the past, which is not quite it. I mean, it is correct, but there can be more to it, at least. It is, the feeling of Vemod is when you experience a loss or something fading into the past that you miss. Something is over and you're feeling a little bit, melancholic about it. But
kind of like grieving, sorrowful.
It's not quite a grief, but it's just sort of a sadness of something that has passed.
Okay.
But one part of the word is the ve, and there's mod, and mod, maybe mot in Norwegian, which is courage. So I don't know if I'm stretching the definition far with this, but at least for us, it's broader than that. It's also the courage or the strength to move past what is lost and move on in life.
Well, this feeling what you just described, or this whole thing, is kind of a very, very audible in your music. There's a certain level of this kind of a tragic emotion or something like something was lost, gone. Not exactly nostalgic way, but kind of like you mentioned, there's this certain level of sadness present there.
Yeah.
Why do you want to make music that is this kind of a dark and negative feelings more often rather than anything positive? I mean, of course, we're talking about black metal, but why do you want to do such music?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex question in a way, because like what I just said about courage and finding the strength to move on, I see that as a positive thing. Like I see it as something that is part of being a human and growing as a human, like moving into life. Like it's part of everyone's life to integrate the losses and the pain that we must experience, because that's what being human is, and integrating into finding joy and strength and courage to move on through it. And I think when working with the Vemod, I think all of those things are like part of that, what we're trying to do. So for me, it's not negative at all. I mean, it's very much a positive thing, like something that is connected to becoming maybe a better person, like trying to
self-improvement,
like, in a way, because you have to like work with all of these difficult things that happens to us all in life. And one thing I really want with Vemod is for it to be compatible with life at large, our lives at large, so we can work with things that really matters to us, so that it can grow with us into the future as we grow as people, as we change as people. Change and like the ever-changing nature of things is a big theme in Vemod, in both the music and the lyrics as well. However vague I am about it, but it's an important point of meditation in everything that we do.
Talking about a little more about lyrics is then, what kind of makes you tick? What makes you like feel like this is something I need to write about? This is something I want to say with my lyrics. Like, are there certain topics that are more common, like reoccurring during the themes on the albums, or are they just individual stories?
I think I usually say that there is no like message as per se. I'm not trying to tell you anything, and I think I've always been as a listener and as a reader, as a consumer of various cultural expressions, I've always been fascinated with the kinds of music and art that does not like force its opinions on me.
Yeah.
So I think I'm naturally gravitating towards doing that in the similar fashion in whatever I do. So there's no message as such. It's not always a clear topic either. I think the lyrics are open to interpretation a lot. So I hope, it is my hope, I can't tell if this is the case, but like when other people are listening or reading, that they can connect it to their own lives, hopefully, and sort of find meaning in it for themselves in the context of their own lives. If it's all possible, maybe it's too much to ask. If you just like it, that's super cool as well. I mean, that would be great. Just enjoy.
You're no mind reader, but this is like a little bit joking thing to say. But can we then call it horoscope metal? No, just joking, but I mean because of the possibility of different interpretations seeing like, okay, this is so much about my life. This is like my life story, going through this and that phase in my life, and those two stories could be very different from one another.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's the beauty of music and art like that, that it can mean different things. And I think that opens up possibilities in a different way, and I think that's something we strive towards in Vemod.
Now, regarding music writing, I mean, making riffs, making full songs and all that stuff, why do you choose this given style, this very, very kind of a particular sub-style of black metal to be your way to express yourself?
Well, when we were young, or when I was young and wanted to start making my own music, it started with, like, I think as every kid, I discovered Metallica at some point, and then metal became a thing, and I went like via a couple of other bands. And then quite soon I was exposed to Norwegian black metal. So, Darkthrone and Emperor and early Satyricon and all of these classics that we all know and love, So I back then I felt that there's something else with this music compared to the other styles of metal. Some sort of mysterious atmosphere that I can't like put my finger on. And I was
it's calling in a way.
It's calling. There's something here that is really, really fascinating. I don't know what it is. it connects with something in me. I don't know why. It's not one of those things that makes perfect sense, because when it comes to black metal as we know it, I mean, it's often about, you know, rebellion and like anti this, anti that, anti religion, anti whatever.
The establishment.
You know, like hateful things, like negativity, nihilism, and so on.
Dark, evil, etc.
Stuff like that. Which, of course, also was fascinating when I was a kid, but it wasn't necessarily that I latched onto.
Yeah.
So, but I knew that there's something else going on here as well. And I think everyone can agree that even if you take that away, there's something, like, especially from that time period, like mid-90s and, yeah, let's say the entire 90s. And lots of classic recordings, also demos with, you know, like certain sounds and certain aesthetic and certain feeling going on.
Very, very much like that particular era, really.
Like for me, that was the big thing, and it still is in a way. Like that's what I care.
That's why we are here, basically.
That's also why we're here, yeah. And like I knew that I needed to do something within this sphere, so I thought it was definitely going to be related to this in some way. So I just started making music, and over the years I've come to the conclusion that maybe what we do in Vemod is very much related to black metal. It's sort of black metal adjacent, like it's on the side, on the periphery of it, somewhat, because we are the musical foundation is those things, and we use a lot of musical elements like the blast beats and the vocals and all of the stuff. But at the same time, we like sort of take it out of its context somewhat and like put our other stuff into it, like our own lives and our own selves, but also other musical styles that we try to integrate into this sort of expression that we have. And I think there is still lots of room for exploration in this area of music, especially when you focus like directly on atmosphere in music. There's just something intangible, and it's still lots of stuff to explore and to discover, I think.
Now, this is something which is sometimes discussed, but not so often like out there. Is like when we talk about early 90s or mid 90s and all that stuff, that is of course often referred as the second wave of black metal, as opposed to what happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
But it seems like some people keep always talking about like second wave if it lasted for like 30 plus years. And what I see with bands like yours is that it's kind of like something is more like now a third wave thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Rather like a more modern version.
Yeah.
And in a neutral way, not being judgmental or anything that, but more like it has to be certain, how to say, a line where the second wave ends rather than going forever. Because I mean, the first wave only lasted for like 10 years or less.
Right.
Depending, of course, where you start counting. But
yeah.
Even if we start from Venom, we can pretty much say the first wave ended when the 80s was over. And now it feels kind of odd to talk about still the second wave when we're talking about the more modernized version of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then some, of course, call it post-black metal and all that stuff. Do you think these definitions are useless, or are they good tools to help people figure out what they are after? Like, if you're like this and that kind of music, maybe go for this and that.
I think the answer to that is yes and no. I think it can easily get confusing pretty soon. What does post-black metal really mean? I'm not quite sure. There's a certain aesthetic coming to mind, which is more modern and, but I'm not sure. I think I've heard someone say, I think I might be misquoting, but I think it was Yusuf Vikotnik from the Norsk, who said that second wave black metal was kind of post-black metal because it was post the first wave of black metal. So if you think of it like that, then, and also like the second wave was pretty experimental in many ways. There was lots of stuff going on in the periphery. It wasn't that strict as we like to think of it now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a big difference whether we're talking about, say, early Enslaved and compared to, say, early Dark Throne. Or compare Immortal, especially the early albums, to Burzum. One is atmospheric, one is very fierce and fast, and of course things get more kind of like more diverse if we include other countries, like take Marduk from here and there and add a little bit of Greece black metal, take some Finnish black metal. You can say like, okay, Berit and Immortal sound the same. So there's definitely...
Yeah, I mean, it was already very, like, it was expansive. And somewhat experimental even. So that's why I'm still fascinated with it. I like the whole spectrum of like not just the classics, not just the dark tones and the mayhems, but also the, you have bands like Arcturus and Vebu and Zende and bands that weren't quite in the middle of it, like in terms of style, but they were still around, and there was lots of stuff going on there. I think it was great. And for me, I like, if you were talking about when the second wave sort of ended, I don't know, I can't say, but...
And does it even matter?
Does it even matter? Yeah. But for me, at least, in the context of our music, then that whole era and that whole sphere and circle of bands were just incredibly important and still remains as important for us today. So that's,
Now, talking still about this whole evolution of Norwegian black metal, because you've seen it for more or less firsthand, being in the country and all. How would you say Norwegian black metal has changed for you over the years if we start thinking about the early 90s and thinking about now 2024? Because a lot of people would say, it started to go sour after around 97, 98, but then again later picked up with new bands emerging early 2000s and kind of like putting back the flag on the map, saying like, hey, Norwegian black metal isn't gone anywhere. It's just a kind of new wave of bands and even new kids to the whole thing. What is your take on the evolution or so to say DNA of Norwegian black metal?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that question, but
I mean, your experience, just to let your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm first of all, I have to say I was very young in the 90s. I was not part of it back then, but like early 2000 and onwards, I like gradually grew into it. And from my perspective, like it's so weird to think about now, first of all, because it wasn't that many years. I mean, in 2000, 2001, I had already started making music for what would at least become Vemod. So to think, I thought of like records coming out in 94, 95, 96, like it was ages ago for me.
Exactly.
But thinking about it now, it was very
only a few years, really.
It was just a few years.
Yeah.
And I thought I was listening to the first Ulver album or something, bought it at the record store, and I thought, wow, this is some ancient, like mysterious stuff. And now I think about it was just a couple of years after it came out.
Is it really kind of weird how the time, the concept of time kind of is when you get older? Because I remember exactly the same thing, like when we started our own first black metal band in 1996, we felt like we were late to the party because those old bands were started in 90, 91, 92, well, then again, like, I don't know, Dimmu Borgir and stuff, or like more like 94, 95, but it felt like, if you have like even 3 years of gap, it felt like these guys are a totally different wave. And now in hindsight, you're like, they were all anyway 30 years ago, so it basically doesn't really matter. No. But the perspective, I mean, I'm very much relate, because at some point it felt like whatever started in 2000 or 2001 felt like, oh, so new wave. And now in hindsight, only less than 10 years.
Exactly. So with that as the background, I mean, already then I felt like it was over. Yeah. So we were like, when we started doing things on our own, it was very much in that spirit of like, we have to do it ourselves now because everyone is doing other things, and we have to create these moods and like worship this sort of atmosphere, and we have to do it ourselves. We have to make the music that we want to hear more of. And then, like, the reason why I'm saying I'm not necessarily the best person to answer is because we were very much in our bubble. I think for a while there we had a little circle of bands in Trondheim and the surrounding areas, and we were just like doing our thing for a number of years, and I didn't really pay attention to much. I mean, I tape traded a bit, and we had all that going on. I had a small tape label that I ran through those years, and I traded like a lot, but still, I mean, I was closed off from everything going on in, say, more of a sort of a mainstream way. So how it has, like, something happens, I think, post, maybe, should we say, Despel Omega, I guess, is changing a lot of this.
Kind of one of the starting points of a new era in a way.
I think in some ways I feel that that era is still going because so many bands are like building on that legacy, that
the dissonant style.
the dissonant style. It's very prominent still.
That's what I would call personally third wave.
Yeah, that
in a
makes
way.
sense to me
Because
as well.
like there is a certain difference when you think about the 90s bands or even certain 2000 bands which sound like as if the 90s never left.
Exactly.
And then there's like Dead Spell Omega, which then again did very different early 2 albums or one of the compilation that we're speaking. But I mean, the early stuff is raw black metal, and suddenly they became like, okay, let's turn a chapter, just a page.
Right.
But now it's like starting the whole new wave of things in a way. And I think the pioneering really changed the game. Like suddenly people are like, okay, so you can still do black metal without sounding like 90s and doing this new wave.
Yeah, and like here I'm a bit boring. I mean, I do prefer the 90s style. That's what I'm into. Like I don't really listen to a lot of black metal post 2000.
Yeah.
I absolutely acknowledge the qualities of that style because I think it's very powerful and has a lot to say, but it's just a personal preference that I don't have use for those energies in my life. So that's when I become the nostalgia hunting.
The old man yelling at cloud.
Like, sort of.
Bands used to be better back in the 90s.
Yeah, no, I'm jumping over all that and really enjoy those old classic records when I feel like I need to.
Yep.
Sort of in those moments. And I think it's great that everything is changing and like people are exploring new ways of expressing this. So it's not about that. It's just a personal preference.
Now talking about your local scene, because you mentioned Trondheim and all that stuff, obviously people need to know, and probably a lot of people even outside Norway know that there are obviously certain scenes. Oslo and surrounding is one thing, Bergen and the surrounding is one thing, and of course Trondheim is very strong with their own set of bands. How do you feel personally about the differences between scenes and your local scene, if you can call it that? How things are different within Norway?
Do you think like musically or?
Yeah, like musically, how much you're connected? Is there certain sound or a certain feel or some camaraderie?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it has a bit to do with like a generational thing because in Bergen and in Oslo you have the old guard, which have classic bands, classic records, very established. Everyone, they're legends. And like in Trondheim we had like a few, the people who would eventually become Hordomreif, and they had Bloodthorn and they had like Keeper Galesin, and they had a scene, but we the group of people coming after, like which Vemod is related to, with Mare and Celestial Bloodshed, Chaos Ritual, these bands, they are coming a few years after here, so there's a generational gap. We did not know each other, and like when I moved to Trondheim to play music, these were the guys that I knew. Like there was no connection to Oslo, no connection to Bergen. Yeah,
that's why I wanted to ask, because the distance is quite big, and people sometimes think, okay, Norway is only a few million people compared to bigger countries. Of course, everybody knows one another, and then you like show on the map, like, okay, Norway is a very, very long country, and the distance between Trondheim and Oslo is like so many hours that people don't necessarily understand that these are like almost like different countries in so many ways, because they're so much apart. Yeah.
No, so I've like for a long time, or I don't know for how long actually, but it was like that for a bit. But then, I mean, I think everything grew out of its confines, so to speak, and we started to like play here in Bergen, for example. I think that was the first thing that happened, that there were connections between the festivals here, like first Hole in the Sky and then Beyond the Gates, with some of the Trondheim bands, and that has been very close ever since. Like for Vemod's sake, I think Bergen is more of a musical hometown than Trondheim is in some ways, because we played so many concerts here. We're always invited to the festivals, and we come here as when we're not performing to just be around. So in some sense, like Vemod has played one show in Trondheim ever.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So you're not so much a hometown band in that
sense. Not really. That might have to do with some, I mean, it could be many reasons for that, but I think one strength that I know about here in Bergen is that people work across the borders of genres a lot.
Yeah.
So they have a really strong like music scene here, like also outside of just metal, but everything is sort of working together to get things going. And I don't have the impression that it's as much of that in Trondheim. Oslo, I know, less about in a way. I mean, you have all the classic bands there as well, and you have a lot of we have connections with. We got to know the guys from Obliteration and Necromantheon. And there was some sort of exchange there. Very, very cool people, extremely talented musicians. With my old band, One Tail One Head, we had a bassist from Oslo, so there were connections there. And they have Darkthrone and all of the retro stuff going on. So there's a lot of, it's very retro metal in Oslo, I feel. And Bergen has the Enslaved and the
Versions and all
Tolkies.
and Tolkies, of course.
Yeah.
Talking about your other bands, I think it's worth noting. Everybody, of course, can scour to Metal Archives and all that stuff, but it would be way more boring than about actually talking about it. What can you tell about your previous bands or now still active side ventures, like name dropping certain experiences, some names that people probably should know about? Of course, I mean, I know One Head, One Tail, but what can you tell about these previous bands and how they are related or not related to Vemod in that sense?
Yeah, so Vemod is the one that I've been doing since I was a kid. It's always been my number one passion project. So One Tail One Head started as a sort of a side project when I moved to Trondheim, and we wanted to play a dirtier and raw, more primitive style of metal, which we did. We didn't release that much. We released a couple of demos, and
it was more kind of kept very underground in a way.
Yeah, in a way.
Cult name, but not exactly an album band.
Not an album band, and like it's a common theme with us. I mean, we are like hopelessly slow to release stuff.
That's with Vemod.
It's absolutely even more true for Vemod. I mean, we don't have much to show for our 20 years of existence.
Two albums in 20 years.
Yeah,
that's not much.
It's not much. It's not much. I know, believe me. But we played lots live after that thing took off a bit, and we did that for a number of years. We finally released an album 2017, 18, something like that, and then we put it to sleep.
Yeah.
So now I think it sort of lives on through some of the other members doing similar things in other bands, but for me it was a very different thing. Like Vemod is very connected to who I am as a person, while that was more on the periphery of my personality, at least, and very interesting to do sort of music or art that is a bit, like you work with something that might be a bit outside of yourself, because you can do that with art and music, and that's also, there's lots to learn from that as well.
What about the other bands? Are there certain bands, projects that need to be mentioned?
No,
there
isn't. I'm fully focused on Vemod. There are some names there. I played live in some bands. I played live in Hordem Reif most recently until last year, and there's nothing much else. I focus really, like, I try to simplify my life and just focus on Vemod. There are so many plans and so many things that we would like to do that we haven't done, and we're not getting any younger. So I feel like the older you get, the faster years really move forward, and then you're like, for sure. Fuck, I have tons of projects that are all unfinished. Like you have to kind of narrow it down in a way to keep things moving. Yeah. One thing I wanted to know is, like, I noticed that Vemod has a kind of a cult following, a cult status in Norwegian scene, but I don't know how it is outside Norway, because I've noticed, like, for instance, I don't have any recollection that I've seen anywhere like Vemod coming to Finland or whatever, but in Norway it seems to be a recognized underground cult name that people seem to appreciate, respect, like, and all that stuff. Right. Why isn't so much going out in Norway? Is there a reason for that? Let's put it this way. No, there are some coincidences there, I think. I mean, if we look at the numbers, like there are some statistics and stuff from like social media, Spotify and so forth. I don't think Norway is the biggest country, actually. I think we have the most listeners in the United States, which is probably because the United States is huge. But then also Germany is a big one. and Norway, Sweden. And I don't know, we have never been a touring band, so we have only played selected festival shows. We have always had this sort of passive, selective approach to live playing.
Kind of cherry picking.
Sort of, and just never trying to get shows, but like say yes or no to whatever comes to us, because we have never, like, it's never been a big goal for us to play as much as possible, but if we can do cool things, then we try to focus on that. And like for the last few years, it's been a lot of the bigger festivals in Norway for some reason. A few abroad, but like we had the pandemic and all that as well, so maybe that plays a part.
Kind of slowed things down and reset things.
It did. So, and for like up until now, we tried really hard to get the album done, and like we also prioritized finishing whatever like needed to be done on the album last year and the years prior.
Now, since you're doing albums only every now and then, and not being the Cannibal Corpse or Marduk putting album every 2 years and all that stuff, how much you change between the albums? Is there like question marks out on the road, like, okay, this time we're gonna do something different, or do you kind of keep very focused in order to keep it very Vemod-like, whatever it means?
I think Vemod has a broad spectrum of things that we can do. We haven't shown that much because we haven't released that much, but we don't struggle to keep it very Vemod-like because we have quite open minds. The three of us in the band are, I think we have rather varied tastes in music, and we meet somewhere in the middle when it comes to the music that we actually write and record. So I think we can do a lot, and we, like for this album, I think it's quite different from the first one. There are certainly more elements, more influences drawn into it, and there is a different production for sure. I mean, the first one was very sort of demo-esque in its sound aesthetic in a way. It was intentionally like that. We recorded on an 8-track tape recorder, and that sort of warm, analog sound that we wanted for that one. We also did something similar, like we mastered it on tape and stuff for this new record as well. We really like analog quality to the sound. Really important for us to not sound like your regular modern metal production,
big label bands which are like
because
highly produced and sound kind of sterile in a way.
This is not interesting at all for us. It's very important to like let it have its character, and I think that was one of the reasons why it took such a long time to finish this record, because we worked a lot on the production itself. I'm biased obviously, but I don't think it sounds exactly like something else. I think and some people have also commented that it's a bit strange sound, like its production is weird.
But then again, it's probably when you compare it to these days albums, which are so often done by, especially the bigger bands, like some high-ass producer doing big budget things, and while they might sound powerful, they are very, very modern, and not necessarily in a good way. Especially if you're looking back into kind of a longing into the 90s feeling when things, even if you went to Greek Holland to record, things were quite different. Okay, this is Arto, okay, it doesn't really sound like Enslaver Bergen, coming from the same place, but the whole spectrum of things were quite different.
Exactly.
And nowadays, even if you have all the equipment, all the knowledge and all the stuff, and you're just like, okay, another nameless or big name band coming from this and that label or that label, and you're like, they somehow end up sounding quite the same in a way. Yeah,
I mean, it's very important for us to avoid that trap.
Yeah.
And I think we succeeded. I think it has character, at least. If you like it or not, it's up to everyone, of course. But it's
matters of taste.
It's a matter of taste, and I think it's important in this day and age to like let your music and your production sort of breathe and have room for everything that needs to be there to like make sure that it can last for a long time and don't be like put into a box of now, like it will be dated in 2 years, 5 years. So hopefully we will not be like that. Well, we shall see. I mean, history will have to judge.
You cannot predict how future is and how things will be judged. No. Now, I think I know the answer to this one, but I still want to ask it like, are you more of a, like, gun pointed at your head, like I always say, are you more of a live band or a studio band?
Oh, we're absolutely a studio band.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
I mean, that's what we dreamt of doing. That was what I dreamt about when I was a kid, like making records.
Yeah.
Like composing them in like sequence and like thinking about what aesthetics to choose, like what photos to have in it, what the design of everything, and all of that is like we're an album band, even if we haven't released that much, but you know, that's what we think about and what we dream about. And then the live dimension, it's important too, but it came second, and it remains second in a way, because it is, if we had to choose, I mean, we would go for the record. It's such a creative thing to compose an album, to think how you want it to sound and feel, and what sort of journey we're going on here, and like how should it look, like how should we present it, all of that endlessly. Like I get very enthusiastic about all of the aspects of record production, and I think if the live thing is kept special and fresh, and we don't do the same thing over and over and over and over, that remains interesting and very much an important part of our existence as a band. But yeah, always record first.
Yeah, this is something that I just came to my mind, because in Norway, especially coming to Infernos and Beyond the Gates, I've noticed there's a lot of kind of recycling, like same bands taking turns in various cities, and of course people outside Norway, oh my God, this is my first time seeing Satyricons and Mayhems and Behemoth, not Behemoth, but you know, the big bands anyway. And at the same time, if you're frequent like a festival visitor, you're like seeing that, and many times. Just because of course they tour outside, and that is what is kind of removing what you just described, being special. So if we don't see, say, Vemod every year at a given city, it kind of gives it a small special nature, like something interesting and unique is about to happen. Yeah. How much you restrict yourself, like, okay, we cannot play there now because we played there a year or two ago, or do you just go by a year or whatever?
Well, that's not the only sort of metric, because it's very important for us to enjoy ourselves as well. And for example, coming back to Beyond the Gates, I mean, we love this festival. Yep. It's our favorite festival. We would probably come every year if they invited us. Okay. Like I don't care if people were tired, if we could come and play and be here, like for sure we would do that. So there's a balancing act of like, what do we want to do, and what is the right thing to do. We're trying to strike a balance. Yeah. And I mean, also when you think about, we're not a big band. Some of those big bands, they really have to think about, of course, that there's so many people that want to see them, and I have understanding for them doing lots to like satisfy the need of so many. I mean, it makes sense. So like it's like almost like a human-friendly black metal in a sense. So it's sort of like responding to the needs of the people, you know. Yeah. But this is up to everyone to like figure out for themselves what is the right thing to do. I think there are many factors at play here. Like mostly it's like, for me it would become difficult the moment I started to grow tired, or I blank on the word, but like it would start to get very similar each time for me, and I think it would be time to take a break from me then. But that's also I just want to keep things fresh for myself, and not to ever come close to
oversaturate.
Like I think like for me, I can only speak for me personally, but I'm like a bit of an introvert, and I get overstimulated quickly. So like to do for example, a summer of festivals, boom, boom,
back to back,
I think it would be like
tedious.
It will be tedious in the long run, at least. Yeah. And so I've been on tours with bands, and it can be fun, but
it can really eat you up.
It takes its toll as well, and like it's good to go home after like 3 or 4 weeks on the road. So it's a matter of taste.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now, steering towards the end, because we're, of course, running out of time eventually, and we, I guess, pretty much covered at least basic ideas. I think so. Who knows what we're coming up with a sequel some years from now, but
probably.
Let's let's prepare for that. So let's do a little bit of foretelling and what's going on happen in say next 3-5 years in the world of Vemod. Like let's dream big rather than what happens next month or the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I know better now than to make promises.
Yeah.
So I guess the correct answer to give here is like see you in 10 years with another record. We could say that for like so that
you wouldn't be lying at least too much.
That's exactly my thinking. So that would be good. But as I think I mentioned earlier, I think like we don't have a lot of ambition as such, but one thing that we would like to do or like to keep Vemod like a sustainable project that we can do like long into our futures. Like for me, it's important to have Vemod growing with myself and my friends in the band. We grow our friendship and our fellowship. We can go through like the various life phases that are coming, and we can still have space for Vemod. We can express ourselves in slightly varying ways. We can go back and forth when it comes to influences, and just it's my main goal to make it a sustainable thing, to do it long term. I think that's the best answer I can give, because I don't have like, where am I in 5 years?
I wouldn't most surely know what I'm doing in 5 years.
Right, so like I can't say, don't have like specific goals like playing there, or we don't have numbers goals, if you like, you know what I mean, like not like so and so many, I don't know,
statistics
like followers on some platform or something, or record sales or anything like that, but just keep doing. I think especially for myself, and I think it goes for the others in the band as well, we are process-oriented people. Like we love to be in the process of making something more than results-oriented, if you know what I mean. So it's one of the reasons why we never put out albums. But to be in it, like to be creative, to work on creative projects together, it means a lot to me, and I think it's a very important part of my life. And that is the main thing for me and for Vemod, I think, going forward. So that's pretty vague, man. I'm sorry, but
that's what it is.
I think it's the best answer I can give to that question, and I'm sure we'll play more live. I hope we'll start recording music again in hopefully sooner than 10 years, but you never know.
Yeah, it takes its time and all that stuff.
It does, and life happens as well. So you never know what life throws on you. So we shall see.
The final question, give a little bit of word to the wise. Now the guys, they're waiting to start their own band, maybe have already recorded a demo, but don't really know what to do next. Or alternatively, a tip to your younger self 20 years ago when you were starting this whole thing. What would you give as an advice?
Oh wow, that's a good question. This is a sort of question that I see other people or read other interviews and they get. I've never been asked this myself. When I was younger, I think I should have maybe dared to be as weird. Like I should have dared to be even weirder, because I knew I had it in me to do the exact weird thing that I wanted to do, and there was no real goal to it, or there was no real future for that sort of thing. Like back in 2005 or something, there was no future for Vemod. Like we didn't even consider playing live, but this weird passion project of mine in my life became the biggest thing in my life over time. And I would wish for people who feel something like that to just be courageous and sort of give it space and do the other thing, but do this thing as well. And don't be afraid to be weird. I think also people people do very similar things these days in terms of music as well. Like
choose the safe road in a way.
Yeah, and I think we need more weird stuff.
More use of kind of stuff.
For example. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, and you never know what can come of a thing. Like you feel passion for something, you don't have to make it your job, but you can just pursue it and see where it takes you. And I also think on the other side of that coin is, like, of course it's good to not have expectations. because everything is a bonus. Like this has been the case for me with Vemod ever since our first record, because I think it was my only proper goal was to release an album, and after that everything has just been like, wow, we can do this. Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, it has been a great thing because we never expected, it was never a goal for us to play in Grieghallen, but now we're doing it and it's a big thing for us. I mean, it's a huge thing that we never expected to do anything like it. And that's, again, we're not a big band, but as there are a few thousands probably out there in the world listening to us, and that's more than I could ever hope for, because it was a weird idea back in time, you know, just a small passion thing that we did, and now we're here. So I think go with it if you have something like that in you.
Oh, I guess the moral of the story is good things to happen to good people. So keep doing, keep trying, keep winning, and if you don't get it right away, well, don't give up. I think this is time to say thank you.
Thank you, man.
So now, of course, you people out there, do yourself a favor. Check out Vemod's music online, and if you get to see them live, of course, do that as well. This is Beyond the Gates 2024. This is Rauta. This is Vemod. Thank you, and stay metal. Thank you so much. This was a really long one. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Now, have your drink. Do you need more ice on it?
No, it's fine, it's fine.
Before we let you go, totally, let's take a quick photo for social media purposes, because when this comes out from the edit and all...